10 Random Magic Cards Rated, Volume 182. Happy Thursday. What's our first card? It's going to be Family Reunion over here from Lost Caverns. It's only 2 cents to buy right now. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white. It's just going to say blue for no reason. 1 and a white for an instant. Choose one of these. Either creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn, or creatures you control gain hexproof until end of turn. It's not that bad. It's really not terrible. I was expecting a really bad card the whole time I was reading it, but actually, I've definitely read way worse Magic cards. 3.8. I was gonna say like 3.4. It's higher than that. It's like a 3.8 at least. This counter spell's a removal spell, or like stomp through with a bunch of tokens or something. I don't know, man. I want to play it like in standard. I want to try this. That's not bad. Oh, it's Victimize. Ooh, Victimize is a good card. Originally printed, yeah, there's a saga. That's right. Look at this colorful art too by Val Myrick. A lot of this other art is not as colorful. So there's that. Anyway, Victimize is $1.50 from Urza's Saga. You can pick it up way cheaper, and I think it's worth it to do so. Really good reanimator piece here. 3 mana, 2 and a black for a sorcery. Choose 2 target creature cards in your yard. Sacrifice a creature. If you do, put the 2 chosen creatures into play tapped. So, yeah, they're tapped down. A little crappy, but any creatures, there's no restrictions as to mana value or power toughness or anything. You can sacrifice the dinkiest token. You can sacrifice like a little sacrifice like aristocrat's guy, you know what I mean? Like a bumbling little dude that leaves behind a token when he dies or something like that. And get back the 2 biggest, nastiest people in your graveyard, which I just think is amazing. But I play this in basically all of my, aristocrat commander decks because you want to sacrifice creatures anyway. And, like, you can just put 2 of the most important creatures in your whole deck, like, back into play from your graveyard because, like Zulaport Cutthroat, Blood Artist, and creatures like that, Marionette Apprentice, they tend to have, like, targets on their back. People want to get rid of them. They know they're part of your whole game plan. So, with the Victimize, usually you can get back to like just integral to your game plan guys, and sacrifice a dude that like you mean to sacrifice anyway, and get Blood Artist triggers along the way. So Victimize, so good. I'm gonna give this card a 7.9. I mean every word of it too. If you really want to get like to some real serious reanimator shenanigans, you can with Victimize. It is not very hard. It's a very powerful card. Next is Swift Reconfiguration, a single white mana for an aura with flash that enchants a creature or a vehicle. Enchanted permanent is a vehicle artifact with crew 5 and loses all other card types. Okay, so it's like a removal spell. All right. Basically, All right. Cool. I guess you could also put it on a vehicle that is otherwise hard to crew. Like on your own side of the table. I don't know if you'd want to spend an entire card to do that, but you could either put it on like Parhelion 2 or some huge vehicle and now you can crew it for like way cheaper. Something like that. Or like a vehicle that does not typically crew, right? Like, not Heart of Kiran, but there's another one. The Predator, something like that. It's in standard right now, I think. You usually have to wait for like 5 of your dudes to die before you can crew it. But with this, you could just be able to crew it. I don't know, it's a silly way to use the card, but I guess you could do it. It's like 360 right now, or 225 if you want the normal version of it. So I guess people are doing stuff with it. It doesn't seem like the worst card in the world. It's pretty flexible. And I guess you could use it in certain like Pioneer vehicles or something like that. I don't know, though. I don't know if it's all that or a bag. I don't even know if it's a bag of chips, much less all that. So I will say though, I'm going to give this like a 5.4. And that might be slightly low depending on what this actually does somewhere, because it may do something somewhere. But it's not even playable in Pioneer, is it? Is it? It's Commander. It's a Commander thing. I don't know, man. I'm going to give this, 5.4 because I just like it as a removal spell. Like there are decks you could play this, and hit one of their creatures and they cannot crew it for the rest of the game. Like it's near impossible to pull it off. So that ain't bad. That really ain't bad. Sky Diamond's up next. This is some art. I respect what they went for there. But this is originally from Mirage. I think we may have just talked about diamonds in general before, so I'm not going to count this towards the ranking, but these are powerful cards. They're a really toned down version of Moxen, right? I mean, they cost 2 mana, right? And they come into play tap, so like they're not the absolute best rocks in the world, but they're also not the worst rocks. So I think we gave them like a 6, right? Just blanket 6 for all the diamonds. They're not so bad. Power Sync, one of the OG counter spells. Let's read the old school text for this from limited edition alpha. This is, wow, only, $45. I'm not going to spend it, but $45 for an alpha Power Sync. You can also get a beta one for $15. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. God, it looks so good. It looks, look at the color palette on this. Look at this. Anyway, in case you want to know what the card does, this is X and a blue for an interrupt, also known as an instant. Target spell is countered unless its caster spends X more mana. Caster of target spell can't choose to let it be countered. If caster of target spell doesn't have enough mana, all available mana from lands and mana pool must be paid, but target spell will still be countered. So this is, let me read the Oracle text, because that made sense to me, but I don't know if it made sense to everyone. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X. If that player doesn't, they tap all lands with mana abilities they control and lose all unspent mana. So that's how we're phrasing that nowadays. This is one of the only that I can really recall. Counter it unless they pay a certain amount of mana thing that forces them to spend all available mana, right? Which I think is really, really, really neat. Not only can you counter their spell, but you can effectively keep them from casting another spell that turn if you have enough mana. And even if they, want to have a couple of lands open after that, well, I'm not going to, okay, you can counter my spell, but I'm not going to pay the mana. No, actually you have to. So if you wanted to play a 2-drop after you cast that spell, you can. So that's just really, really neat. Power Sync was actually one of the best, counter spells in control decks in the early days of Magic, but that's just because there weren't a whole lot of counter spells, right? But Power Sync is still like not awful. It's really not. Most counter spells that have been printed in the last 10 years are likely better than this, but I've always had some respect for Power Sync. I'll give this the honorary 5. I'll give this the honorary 5 right now because I think it probably deserves around a 5-ish anyway. I think this is right up around a cancel, which is like more in line with a 4. But again, I respect Power Sync. It has more uses outside of just counter target spell. So cool card. Plummet is up next. We have done Plummet before, which is good. Predator's Hour is up next. I just caught eye of this card the other day, and the art pulled me in. Because I was like, ooh, a full moon with some bats and a wolf and some ghosts. That seems cool. What's this do? So here's what it does. It's 2 mana, 1 and a black for a sorcery. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at and play that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. So, all of your creatures get a sort of outrageous robbery type ability upon combat damage. And thankfully they get menace too, so like some form of evasion so they can get in more likely. This is only a couple of mana. I don't love that it's sorcery speed. I wish you could play it after blocks are chosen, but that's the entire reason it's sorcery speed, right? Cool little card from Crimson Vow Commander here. You can get it for like 20 cents. It's not being played everywhere, but it is a cool little card. Like I said, I like cool little cards. So I'm going to give this a 3.8. I actually don't think it's super powerful, but this could lead to, a fairly decent spread of card advantage, right? You're paying 1 card and you can get 3-4 cards some of the time off of it. I think on like the highest sort of average, anywhere between 2 and 4 cards is probably expected from a Predator's Hour. So it's not bad. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it is pretty situational. I imagine it rots in your hand a good bit. It has to be set up correctly, right? So as much as I'd like to give this like a 5.7 or something, because look at all the card advantage. Again, I think that it requires some real setup to actually like make it pop. But next is Frostboil Snarl. Have we done these? I'm not sure. So it's a land, and when it enters the battlefield, you may reveal an island or mountain from your hand. If you don't, the CTB's tapped. It taps for blue or red. This is originally printed in Strixhaven, as it were. This is only about 32 cents. You can get a copy for 20 cents from Commander Masters, because it's not the best Commander card in the world, but this is often going to be your 1 or 2 drop, you know, whether it comes into play tapped or not. You just play it on turn 1 and it's tapped. If you don't have any other, you know, important land types in your hand or something, but you just got a bunch of good non-basics, you start the game with this. But, you know, on turn 1 or 2, if you still happen to have an island or a mountain, like you've got a shock land or something like that in your hand, then, you know, go for it. So, I don't know. I've always kind of respected these as far as dual lands go. I think they're better in 1v1s, by and large. Again, it depends on how complex the mana base gets. We talked about a land like that yesterday, but by and large, these are more than acceptable. I will give them a 7.2. I like non-basics, dual lands especially, that have the ability to come into play untapped. Yeah, those are really strong. Spinner of Souls, dude, this card's great. This is from Foundations. I'm going to leave it on this cool alternate art here from Xavier Ribeiro. This is really nice. 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 4/3 Spider Spirit with reach. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this one, it has the another disease. It suffers from anotheritis, where it has that word on it, and it kind of ruins the card a little bit. It also says non-token, so it's really kneecapping itself in a couple of important ways, but it's still a good card that green does not often get access to when it comes to effects like this. It's more of a black effect for the most part. But this makes it, you know, pretty playable in like Dina, Soul Steeper, and other kind of green-based aristocrats decks. Because you kind of get a Midnight Reaper, Optimistic Scavenger type effect, but unlike Scavenger, Optimistic Scavenger, that's the white card. Morbid Opportunist, that's the card I'm looking for. But unlike Opportunist, it triggers more than once per turn. It basically guarantees that whenever a guy dies, you get a new creature, which is often what you're looking for anyway to keep up the aristocrat tricks. So that's really sick. Also, obviously goes in like Ishkana and other, you know, spider-centric commander decks where spiders are commander. This is phenomenal. So really like this card a lot. It has to, a couple of dudes have to die, and they have to be like real dudes, not just token guys, in order for you to like start getting card advantage off of this. But obviously, if you're engineering a situation where you're sacrificing multiple dudes or losing dudes in combat, then yeah, suddenly the card becomes, you know, really card positive in terms of what actually it's getting, you know, advantage it's getting you. So really like this. Haven't gotten a lot of chances to play it in Commander, obviously. 0 chances, literally. But I've been trying to jam it in Standard, and it really hates these 2 words. Another non-token. It hates these words so much. But, you know, there's still some work for it to do. Just a solid card, all things considered. I'll give it a 5.3. I think it's good. Next is Harsh Mentor. Man, this is a decent card right here. Originally printed in Amonkhet. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 human cleric. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land on the battlefield, if it is not a mana ability, Harsh Mentor deals 2 damage to that player. So this is originally printed in Amonkhet, and it's only about 37 cents. It's also in Tales of Middle-earth Commander for about 20 cents right now, which is unbelievable to me, man. This card looks really, really good. Still looks good. It still does, especially as like a sideboard piece, even all the way back to Legacy, where there are a ton of abilities, especially on lands, that aren't mana abilities that you may have to worry about. So not too shabby. I think this is always a card we need to take a second look at. It just looks like it should do very well. And even in Commander especially, it seems like it'll keep your opponent off of all kinds of shenanigans. You know, like just infinite tap my guy over and over shenanigans, or like whatever you're doing with artifacts. You know, I really feel like Harsh Mentor is an underrated Magic card. I'm going to give this a 5.2. Obviously a little narrow, slightly situational, but we mostly rate for casual Commander. And I think this is just kind of a generically powerful card in that format where like people are always doing stuff. People are always up to something. You know what I mean? So I think it's not bad there. I really do. Cabal Pit. That's a decent card. Originally printed in Odyssey. Also available from The List, would you believe it? It's about $2 to pick up a copy, but it goes in most black decks. This is a land that taps for black and deals a damage to you, but it also has Threshold. You pay a black, you tap it, you sack it, and a creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. This should go in, again, most black Commander decks. Late in the game, it really doesn't matter if you're trying to hit Threshold or not. Right? This is just a removal spell, suddenly, against some people's commanders. It's really quite a good land. And in the meantime, it's an untapped land that taps for, black mana, which is wild. I know it deals damage to you. Like, I don't care. I have 40 life, dude. Like, this card is fantastic. Always has been. And somewhat sought after, in Commander. This list copy for 58 cents is kind of bugging me out. That seems like a pretty good deal for this card. And honestly, I feel like it should be more than $2. Goes in most of my black Commander decks, which is most of my Commander decks. I really like swamps, or the lack thereof in this case. But yeah, any land that turns into a removal spell late is crazy. And you can put this in your yard to be like Life from the Loam, back and use it again, or anything like that, right? Slogurk, tricks, or whatever. Getting this back is fairly easy, is what I'm getting at. So, yeah, I'm going to give Cabal Pit like a 7.9. It's just a fantastic Magic card. Probably the best card we'll look at today, but let's find out. Last card is Magus of the Disc. This is pretty good. Originally printed in Time Spiral. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 white for a 2/4 human wizard that comes into play tapped. You can pay 1 and tap it, and Navimriel's Disc to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So not planeswalkers, not lands. That's pretty good. Anything that just is Navimriel's Disc is pretty decent, but obviously this is much more killable in a lot of ways than Navimriel's Disc. But this is also a lot more like reanimatable. So, works on a couple of different levels. That's not bad. Sucks that it comes into play tapped, but there's a fair number of ways to untap it and use it immediately. I like that about it. In an indestructible deck, or if you have a way to give it indestructible, that seems pretty gnarly. You know what I mean? Just activate it every turn. What are you going to do about that? So, definitely neat to have this on a stick. But obviously, coming in play tap, somebody's going to kill it. You're denying somebody resources and you just reanimate it later and dare and kill it again. So, I really do like the idea of giving it indestructible. I want to do that now. But for only like 22 cents from Commander 2020, I think there's probably some fun stuff you could get to, like cooking. Put something on the stove with Magus of the Disc. I'm going to give this a 5.7, and I mean it. It looks a little bit weak, but, if you can actually get to exploit this over and over, then I think you're having a good time. Nobody else is, but like you are. I guess that matters a little bit. But that is all for Thursday, everybody. That appears to be 10 cards. Went by so fast. We danced and played all night. I will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye. Love you.